You know, when most people picture Bill Gates today, they see this sweater-wearing kind of nerdy philanthropist, right?
For sure. The guy giving away billions and, recommending books on his blog.
Right, exactly. But if you actually stop and look at the blueprints of how his mind works, especially during those decades he was building his empire, it is just a completely different picture.
It really is.
The public perception of this gentle visionary, it kind of hides a very specific, fiercely unsentimental, and, well, highly pragmatic way of viewing reality.
Yeah, pragmatic is definitely the word.
So we are pulling from a couple of curated sources today for this deep dive, just to get past that public relations polish. For everyone listening, if you love to learn but you absolutely hate information overload, this deep dive is tailored right for you.
Exactly. We've got a biographical overview of his life, mapping that journey from a Seattle teenager to a global software magnate.
Yeah.
And alongside that, we have this collection of his direct quotes that are just, they are incredibly blunt.
Oh, they pull no punches.
No, they don't. Those quotes are really the engine of our analysis today. They read less like inspirational posters and more like a survival manual for the modern economy.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
He operates with this set of rules that completely strip away the illusions most of us hold about how the world actually functions.
Which brings us to our mission today, right? We want to decode the mindset of a pioneer. We aren't just going to recite a timeline of Microsoft's stock price or list his charitable foundations.
Well, you can just look that up.
Exactly. We are investigating the mechanics of how he actually thinks about success, how he processes failure, his rules for technology, and frankly, the harsh realities of life that he insists we all have to face. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the foundational environment that built this pragmatic visionary.
Well, context is everything here. William H. Gates was born on October 28, 1955 in Seattle. He grew up with two sisters.
Right.
And to really understand his operating system, you have to look at the household he grew up in. His father, William H. Gates II, was a prominent Seattle attorney.
Yeah, a heavy hitter.
Absolutely. And his late mother, Mary Gates, was a school teacher, a regent at the University of Washington, and the chairwoman of United Way International.
So you have a household that is just steeped in logical argument, and the mechanics of the law from the father's side, combined with this high-level societal organization and heavy-hitting networking from the mother's side.
Exactly.
I mean, that is a potent mix for a kid to absorb at the dinner table.
It really is. And that structured, highly analytical foundation, it meets a massive pivot point when he attends the private Lakeside School.
Oh, this is the crucial part.
Yeah, so this is the late 1960s. He's 13 years old. And the school gets a teletype terminal that connects to a mainframe computer.
Wow.
And he immediately starts programming on it.
I want to pause right there, actually, because I think we lose perspective on this today. Living in a world of smartphones.
Oh, completely.
A 13-year-old getting access to a computer in 1968 is not like handing a kid an iPad today. That is literally like handing a kid the keys to a spaceship.
Yeah, it was unheard of.
It was so incredibly rare. It completely altered his trajectory because he had, thousands of hours of practice before the rest of the world even knew what a software loop was?
Right, and it required a massive investment from the school's mother's club just to rent the computer time.
Which is wild.
It is. And that rare access brings us to Harvard in 1973. He's there, and he happens to live down the hall from Steve Ballmer, the future CEO of Microsoft.
Talk about networking.
Seriously. And during this time, Gates and his childhood friend Paul Allen do something just monumental. They develop a version of the programming language BASIC for the Emites Altair.
Okay, let's explain why that matters, because to the average person writing BASIC for the Altair, it sounds like boring tech trivia.
Yeah, it sounds super dry.
But the Altair was basically the very first microcomputer, except it was just a metal box with blinking lights and switches.
Right, no screen, no keyboard.
Exactly. Without software, it was just a really expensive paperweight. By writing a version of BASIC for it, Gates and Allen created a translation layer. They made it possible for a human being to actually type instructions and tell this alien machine what to do.
They provided the bridge between human intent and machine execution.
Yeah.
And the moment they realized they had built that bridge, Gates makes a massive leap. In his junior year, he drops out of Harvard entirely to dedicate himself to Microsoft, which he and Allen founded in 1975.
Which brings up a huge debate, and I kind of want to push back on the mythology of the lone genius here.
Sure.
Did Gates succeed purely because of this intense, innate focus that made him drop out of the world's most prestigious university? Or was it simply the massive advantage of his environment?
That's the million-dollar
I
question.
mean, he had wealthy parents, he had the Mother's Club buying computer time, he had Harvard connections. It takes incredible nerve to drop out, sure, but he also had a safety net made of solid gold.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you really have to view his trajectory as a combination of runway and engine.
Okay, runway and engine.
Yeah, the foundational environment, the supportive, well-connected parents, the elite private school, the rare access to a mainframe that was the runway.
Right.
It was undeniably a massive, privileged runway. But a long runway doesn't make an airplane take off on its own. You still need an engine.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Gates's engine was a highly specific, unwavering vision. At a time when the world thought computers were just, giant calculators for government agencies and massive corporations, he and Paul Allen had this guiding belief that there would be a computer on every single office desktop and in every single home.
Which sounded crazy at the time.
Completely crazy. But that exact same foresight that allowed him to see the future of personal computing is also what makes his view on personal failure so unconventional.
Yeah, because to the average person, walking away from a Harvard degree looks like a monumental failure of judgment.
Exactly. But as our sources reveal, Gates views failure and success through a radically different lens. He assesses value based on outcomes, not institutional stamps of approval.
Yeah.
There is a fantastic quote from our sources that illustrates this perfectly. Reflecting on his education, he noted, "I failed in some subjects in exam, but my friend passed in all. Now he is an engineer in Microsoft, and I am the owner of Microsoft."
Wow.
Yeah. He also pointed out that while he never topped his classes, today the toppings of the best universities are his employees.
It's a brilliant subversion of how we are taught to measure worth, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We are heavily conditioned to believe that the grade on the paper is the ultimate metric of potential. But Gates recognized early on that academic success involves following a very rigid, predictable set of rules.
Right, you study the syllabus, you pass the test.
Exactly. But real-world impact and business building are entirely different games with chaotic, unwritten rules.
And that suspicion of predictable rules, it actually extends to his view of victory itself. He famously stated, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose."
Okay, I have to jump in and ask a skeptical question here.
Go for it.
Isn't it incredibly easy to sit back and say success is a lousy teacher when you are literally a billionaire?
Fair point.
I mean, to a lot of people, that might just sound like a humble brag from someone who has experienced more success than anyone else in history.
I'd frame it slightly differently, actually. He isn't saying success is inherently bad. He's diagnosing a mechanical flaw in human psychology.
Okay, how so?
Well, when a system works perfectly, you don't look under the hood, you don't question your assumptions. Success creates a blind spot because you assume every decision you made was brilliant.
Right.
When in reality, you might have just gotten lucky with market timing or a competitor's mistake. It creates fragility.
You know, when you put it like that, it reminds me of playing a difficult video game.
Oh, I like this.
If you breeze through a level on your very first try, you don't actually learn the game's mechanics. You just mash the buttons and happen to survive.
Right, you got lucky.
You learn nothing. But when a boss keeps defeating you over and over again, you are forced to pay attention. You have to memorize the patterns, find the weaknesses in your own strategy, and adapt. You learn the underlying architecture of the entire game exclusively through your failure.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
Mm.
And it aligns perfectly with how he views the ultimate boss fights in the business world, which are the consumers.
Yeah.
Gates argues that while it is fine to celebrate success, it is far more important to heed the lessons of failure. He states point blank, "Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning."
That's intense.
It is. What's fascinating here is that Gates treats business like a constant, emotionless feedback loop.
So a customer screaming about a bug in your software isn't a personal attack to him.
Not at all.
It's a diagnostic report. It is raw data showing you exactly where your system is broken.
Friction is data. That is the core takeaway. When a customer is unhappy, they are handing you the blueprint for your next iteration. If you are blinded by the validation of your happy customers, you just stop iterating.
And that data-driven, almost clinical approach to business, it translates directly into how he views personal development, too.
Oh, it really does.
This is where the quotes from our sources get incredibly sharp.
Yeah.
He is not interested in coddling anyone. If you want a masterclass in shattering youthful illusions, you just have to look at his advice for navigating the real world.
He actively dismantles the romanticized view of early adulthood. I mean, the very first piece of advice he offers is, life's not fair, get over it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the contrast between his advice and today's prevailing culture is staggering.
It's night and day.
Let's look at the workplace. He says, flipping burgers is not beneath your dignity. Your grandparents had a different word for burger flipping. They called it opportunity. And he warns that if you think your teacher is tough, wait until you get a boss. A boss doesn't have tenure. A boss has a bottom line.
He's reminding people that television and movies are not real life. In real life, people actually have to leave the coffee shop and go to jobs.
Right.
Life is not divided into neat semesters, you don't get summers off, and very few employers are interested in helping you, quote-unquote, find yourself.
He basically tells people to do that on their own time.
Exactly.
And the most revealing quote in this section, the one that really gets to the bone, is about self-esteem. He says, "The world won't care about your self-esteem. The world will expect you to accomplish something before you feel good about yourself."
That's a tough pill to swallow.
Think about how countercultural that is right now. Today, the cultural narrative is heavily focused on self-care, continuous external validation, and building up a child's self-esteem as a prerequisite for them doing anything else.
Right, the idea that you have to feel perfectly safe and validated before you can achieve.
Exactly. And Gates is arguing the exact opposite.
Because the market doesn't care about your internal state. It doesn't care if you feel validated or if you're having a tough week. It cares about your external utility.
Can you do the job?
Right. Can you solve a problem? Can you build a system? Can you bounce back from a failure? He's suggesting that genuine, robust self-esteem doesn't come from being told you're special. It comes from the undeniable, concrete evidence of having accomplished something difficult in a world that owes you nothing.
It's the difference between being handed a participation trophy and actually building the muscle required to run a marathon.
Yes, perfect analogy.
The trophy collects dust, but the muscle sustains you. And he brings that same unsentimental reality check to the concept of individual specialness. He notes that in China, when you're 1 in a million, there are 1,300 people just like you.
It's a staggering statistic to internalize. You think your talent profile makes you a unique genius, but on a global scale, you are a commodity.
Yeah.
You have to outwork and out-innovate the other 1,300 people who have your exact same skill set.
That realization that you are competing on a massive global scale and that the world ruthlessly demands utility is what drives his hyper-pragmatic view on leverage, technology, and playing the long game.
Right.
Because stripping away illusions isn't just for his personal philosophy, it's how he views the deployment of capital and engineering. Which brings us to perhaps his most famous quote on efficiency. Gates says, "I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it."
It sounds like a joke at first, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it is a profound observation about human nature and systems design.
It's like water flowing downhill. Water doesn't care about looking busy or putting in long hours. It ruthlessly seeks the path of least resistance.
Right.
A highly driven traditional worker might manually input data for 10 hours a day and expect a gold star for their effort. But a quote-unquote lazy engineer isn't going to do a manual task 1,000 times. They're going to spend 2 hours writing a script to automate it and then never do it again.
They eliminate the friction entirely. And that concept of automation leads to a fundamental rule he established for how businesses deploy technology.
Okay, what's the rule?
He argues that the first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency.
Makes sense.
But the second rule is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency.
Oh, man. Let's ground that in a real-world example because that's huge.
Yeah, let's do it.
If a company's physical filing system is a chaotic mess where no one can find anything and they decide to buy expensive software to digitize it, they don't magically get organized.
No, not at all.
They just get a digitized, chaotic mess that fails at the speed of light. Technology doesn't fix a broken process. It just amplifies whatever process is already there.
Exactly. Technology is simply an amplifier. And he applies this same logic to education, actually. He explicitly states that technology is just a tool to get kids working together, but the teacher is the most important factor in motivating them. You cannot replace the human element of inspiration and discipline with a piece of hardware or a tablet.
But when it comes to the software itself, His views on his own industry are incredibly stark. He says, intellectual property has the shelf life of a banana.
A banana.
Yeah, meaning it rots quickly. Today's cutting-edge software is tomorrow's outdated legacy system.
This raises an important question, though, and it gets to the core of his genius as a business leader. If intellectual property rots like a banana, how on earth did Microsoft build a multi-decade empire?
Exactly. Didn't they basically invent the banana and sell it for 30 years?
Well, no. They didn't sell one banana. They built a system designed to constantly replace the rotting bananas.
Okay, right.
Look at Microsoft's history. They built an empire on MS-DOS, which was a text-based operating system. When graphical interfaces emerged, DOS became a rotting banana, so they built Windows to replace their own product.
They cannibalized themselves.
Exactly. And then when packaged software sold on CD-ROMs started rotting, they aggressively moved toward cloud computing and subscriptions. They survived because of what Gates calls the 10-year rule.
Which is the quote, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yes. Patience is the underlying mechanism of his empire. You don't win the decade by having one good year or one good product. You win by surviving and iterating through 10 years of changing paradigms.
Wow.
He foresaw the internet becoming the town square for the global village of tomorrow, and he aggressively pivoted his entire massive company to meet that reality, knowing it would take a decade to fully materialize.
And he documented all of this in real time. He wrote The Road Ahead in 1995, which topped the New York Times bestseller list for 7 weeks, and then Business at the Speed of Thought in 1999, which was published in 25 languages.
Yeah, massive hits.
And he donated the proceeds from both books to nonprofits supporting tech in education, which transitions into his philosophy on capital itself. Our sources highlight that his deployment of resources goes far beyond software.
Oh, definitely. He operates with the mindset of a venture capitalist trying to solve systemic global issues. He founded Corbis, creating a massive digital archive of art and photography long before the widespread visual internet.
Right.
He sits on the board of Berkshire Hathaway. And his philosophy is that private money can take massive, unproven risks in a way that government money simply cannot or will not.
Because a government is accountable to taxpayers and election cycles, making them super risk-averse.
Right, they can't afford to fail.
But a billionaire deploying private capital can afford to fund 50 experimental vaccine approaches, knowing 49 will fail just to find the one that works. He applies that same relentless drive to his personal life, too. He married Melinda French in 1994, has 3 kids, and enjoys golf, tennis, and bridge. But the internal engine never shuts off. Even after losing tens of billions of dollars in Microsoft stock in a single year, which he rightly noted in our sources, is more than most people make in a lifetime, he remains completely unsatisfied.
Yeah, that quote is amazing.
He said, if I'd had some set idea of a finish line, don't you think I would have crossed it years ago?
There is no finish line for him. The goal isn't to sit at the top of a static mountain. The goal is to constantly build new tools that allow others to build. He notes that the leaders of the next century will be those who empower others.
So we've journeyed from a 13-year-old kid discovering a teletype terminal in 1968 to a Harvard dropout to a global titan whose software architectures run the modern world. We've seen that his worldview is built on a foundation of hyperpragmatism.
Yeah, very much so.
He leverages efficiency by embracing the lazy path of automation. He treats friction and unhappy customers as his most valuable diagnostic data, and he fiercely values harsh truths over comfortable illusions.
He demands that we face reality exactly as it is, not as we wish it to be.
Which brings us directly back to you, the listener. Think about the systems running in your own life right now. How are you viewing your own unhappy customers, whether that's a literal client, a frustrated boss, or just a struggling creative project?
Are you seeing their friction as a personal attack, or are you utilizing it as a diagnostic tool to fix your engine?
Right. Are you expecting the world to hand you self-esteem and validation before you've actually accomplished the hard work?
It's a really challenging mirror to look into, especially when society encourages us to constantly seek comfort.
So, what does this all mean? It means that the systems that run our world were built by people who looked at failure not as a source of shame, but as the mandatory beginning of the next iteration. But I want to leave you with a thought that takes Gates's philosophy and pushes it into an area we're just starting to grapple with today.
Well, this should be good.
So, Gates established that automation applied to an inefficient operation simply magnifies the inefficiency, right?
Right.
Let's look at human communication. As a species, we are deeply inefficient at communicating. We misunderstand each other, we struggle to find the right words, we carry emotional baggage into our texts and emails.
A ton of friction.
The process is full of friction. So what happens when we apply hyper-advanced automation to that? What happens when we use AI to write our emails, mimic our voices, and predict our responses to our friends and family?
Wow.
Does this new technology magically magnify our deep human connection? Or, according to Gates's own rule, will it simply automate and magnify our profound inefficiency at truly understanding one another?
That is a heavy question to ponder.
Think about that the next time you let a predictive text algorithm finish a sentence for someone you love. Until next time, keep diving deep.